So our speaker today is Will Gallmeyer, and he's the president of Green Projects in Grand Rapids. And so what Will has given us here is that he will answer questions. What is residential electrification? Why is it important to to the climate fight, the residential one? And how can we best organize such a project to make it available for a lot of people? And does Michigan have, and I think Michigan's newly launched 210 million program that will help people to finance things. All right. So with that, Will, I'm going to hand it over to you. Again, Will is out of Grand Rapids.
Well, thank you so much, Nikki, and thanks for the invite. It was nice meeting you at the Electrify West Michigan home tour a couple weeks ago, I think it was. And so that's kind of a little side project that I run. It is a container for the conversation on residential electrification, and as we'll see today, energy efficiency, which is really important to tackle along with electrification in Michigan. And thanks to the rest of you for being here as well. I'm participating in the Grand Rapids Climate Coalition, and so this is good grassroots stuff that we do. So I will share my screen here, and I've got a little PowerPoint. Does that look good? Okay. So energy efficiency for electrification, why and how? The agenda today, who am I? Who is Green Projects Group? Why electrification is a lower carbon way to run your life. Electric technologies in detail and why they're better. This talk, last time I gave it, it was called More Joyful Living Without Carbon. So that's kind of, we don't want people to think that they're going to have to give up because that is uniquely anti-American. So there's a lot of perks to living an all-electric life. I have some free and some paid services that I'll briefly mention. And I want to give a shout out to MyHERS, the Michigan Home Energy Rebates Program. That last point that Nikki mentioned was kind of a softball. I said, we will answer the question, does Michigan have a newly launched $210 million program? Of course, the answer is yes. And then we'll leave some time for a Q&A. So this is me. I'm Will. I grew up in Grand Rapids, went to school in Western Illinois at Knox College, go Prairie Fires, and had a variety of experiences in my 20s in the built environment. I worked for Habitat for Humanity. I was lucky enough to go work with them twice in Romania. I flipped a house with my dad. I worked for a realtor who did a lot of hardcore preparation to boost sale prices. And then I kind of wormed my way more and more in the energy efficiency direction. So I worked for an air sealing and insulation contractor. Then I started working in the utility rebate programs. There's a lot of money that is available for you through whoever provides your electricity and your natural gas. And then I jumped to the other side of the rebate application and worked for a lighting contractor. And all the while I was looking for the adult who might be my career mentor, and I never found that person. And frankly, found myself quite annoyed by middle management everywhere I went. So in 2019, I launched Green Projects Group, and now I get to wear all the hats, or perhaps I have to, depending on how you look at it. That's my wife, Sam, in the periwinkle blue hat, our daughter, Charlie, who's 4, almost 5, and Amelia, who's 1, almost 2. And we live in the southeast side of Grand Rapids, and I think it's safe to say that I'm doing this for them and the world they will inherit. I've been interested in sustainability for a long time, but being a father certainly sharpens one's relief. So this is a professional as well as a personal mission for me. Green Projects Group was founded in 2019 and did some multifamily commercial lighting work because that's what I had known, and then quickly found a niche in the municipal utility residential lighting game. So in a nutshell, I took their program, put it online in a web form, made it way easier to participate, and I shipped light bulbs directly to thousands of customers across Michigan, sent out a couple 100,000 light bulbs, probably saved a few million kilowatt hours. And then in late 2023, there was a little legislative change that put the kibosh on that program. Fortunately, around then, I had been studying the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act. And so I sort of started pivoting my messaging more from just, hey, get free light bulbs to residential electrification and energy. You may have heard it called home performance. That's really what this field is. It tends to be called home performance. And I'm specifically focused on home performance for electrification. So it never hurts to mention why with this crowd. It's probably redundant, but for the last 800,000 years, our carbon dioxide level in parts per million has never been higher than 300. This is from NASA. We are currently knocking on the door of 420 if we haven't passed it already. So this is what causes the greenhouse gas effect, making our #1 space rock maybe not quite as inhabitable as it used to be. So I've been heavily influenced by this book, Drawdown by Paul Hawken. In it, he lists the top 80 or so ways that we can reduce our total atmospheric CO2 equivalent. He lists it here in gigatons, and all these add up to about 1,000 gigatons worth of solutions. I had been working on number 33, LED lighting in households, which is 7.81 gigatons estimated. I think this is between now and 2050. So that was about 0.742% of the problem as described by this book. And I was always wondering as I looked through this list, because I'm a little ADD, could I do other things? Could I do silvopasture, refrigeration, geothermal, nuclear? And mostly I was just focused on my LED program, so I just kept my head down and I worked on that. But then I learned about another book. Many of these solutions are, we could think of this as like a buffet of all the available options. Many of them are social and behavioral changes, which sounded really hard. Found out about this Electrify by Saul Griffith, and in it he argues that 85% of the problems in here are related to America's energy grid. So I thought, okay, 85%, are those all connected anywhere? What he found is that 42% of that 80% are kitchen table decisions. And what we mean by that is the machines in our homes and the cars that are in our driveways. So if we could tackle that problem, that's nearly half of what I would describe as something that we can reasonably achieve in the next 20 or 30 years. Some of the top 10 in here are educating women and girls, going vegetarian, reducing food waste. Those are good and noble projects, but they seem a little too intangible for me. I want to touch and feel things. So what he did to figure this out was he looked at this data from the US Department of Energy. This is called a Sankey diagram, S-A-N-K-E-Y. And since 1970, they've been tracking all the origins, modes of transportation, and end uses of energy in the US. And what they found, as I said, is that 42% of the problem is associated with our kitchen table decisions. And I'll show you a little better graphic that shows it in pictures, more easily digestible graphic in a second. Many of you certainly aware that we have to tackle the supply side of things as well. I can't encourage you to go electric in your home life without dealing with the fact that a lot of our power comes from fossil fuels, right? Well, unless any of you works at a power plant, I can assure you that it's in good hands. Michigan has Eagle, Environment, Great Lakes, something else, energy, of course, energy. And so they have a healthy climate plan, and they are aiming to, in part, generate 60% of the state's electricity from renewable resources and phase out the remaining coal-fired power plants by 2030. And they want to do this in an equitable way as well, which is really great. More importantly, probably, is our largest utilities have also made commitments. Consumers and DTE are aiming for net zero carbon emissions by 2040 and 2050, respectively. So the grid is getting cleaner. Michigan, as well as our utility providers, are seeing to that. When we have all that clean energy, we need to start limiting point sources of emissions. A point source is anything that burns gas itself. So all our cars, for the most part, pretty much burn gasoline. our water heaters, our furnaces, our dryers, our stoves, they all burn gasoline. So we need to switch those all to accomplish this 42% mission. We need to switch those all to electric. So what can a small local business do about this? I want to work at this intersection. I like working with individual decision makers, not so much into the business to business conversation. Been there, done that. I like the nitty gritty of the kitchen table work. So I have free online, usually in-person classes and meetups. Electrify West Michigan is one such place where I met Nikki. There you'll find a community of like-minded people. I also have gobs of free info online at greenprojectsgroup.com, blogs there, and as well I have a monthly newsletter that I distribute, which you can sign up for. And it's stuff going around Michigan, what you need to know. And anybody who just needs 30 minutes, you can also sign up through my calendar link to get coaching on the technologies, your project in particular. And I can provide some information on rebates and tax credits. On the paid side of things, I do energy audits. I can do a whole project management, or I can just consult on one specific thing. I have what I think is a pretty cool gas to electric planning software that I put together for 10 bucks. I'll show you a screenshot of that in a second. And I have connections to some of the consumer goods type electrification products that can help you go electric. So here's some pictures from Electrify West Michigan. We toured one home in Grand Rapids here, which is a passive house, which is very cool. Here we had a climate cafe to talk about feelings as they pop up around climate change. It can be stressful. We drove some Teslas. We've also ridden e-bikes. Here we are looking at a giant solar installation. So it's really fun. I kind of hate event planning, but this works for me because it's exactly what I want to be talking about. Here are some blogs that I've written. Here's my $10 electrification planning tool. It's a drag and drop thing. So I've listed all of the things I'm about to tell you about, how costly they are, what percent of your carbon footprint you can expect to reduce if you achieve this goal. And you just drag and drop based on when you want to accomplish it. So here are the technologies. As I see it, there are about 12 things that we can do to electrify our lives, and I've kind of grouped them together. Transportation is about 50% of your carbon footprint. So for anybody following along, that's 50% of the 42% of the 85%. So for what we can control, if you switch to an EV, that's usually about half your carbon footprint. 25% is upgrading your space conditioning, or HVAC, to a heat pump, getting away from a natural gas furnace. In order to do that, I've kind of paired this one with a weatherization. It's important that you not have too large of a heating and cooling load in order to go all electric. And there are 5 that are sort of gimmies in my opinion, because these are one-for-one replacements. Lighting, just buy LEDs. That's all you have to do. Throw away your incandescents and switch to LEDs. Lawn tools, you know, one for one, just buy electric lawn tools. Cooking, switch to induction is really the best, although electric is still pretty good. There are some perks when it comes to induction though, and I'll describe those in a second. If you have any interest in getting an e-bike, I highly recommend it. It is extremely fun. I got so excited about this, I started a side business called West Michigan e-bikes. So I have 10 in my garage if you want to come test ride. Water heaters are nearly a one-for-one replacement. This is the one that you might have to hire a contractor to run some electrical. The next 2 are just things to keep in mind. They don't necessarily electrify your life directly, but indoor air quality, if we're going to tighten up your home so that it has a reasonable load for heating and cooling, we want to make sure that we're not sealing too many pollutants inside the home. And then your electrical panel, we want to make sure that you actually have enough juice to accomplish these projects. Solar, if you have the budget for it and the interest, of course, go solar. I think of this a little bit as extra credit. I personally think that our utilities, this is kind of their job, and they've promised to get clean electricity on the grid. But if you want to go solar, you will certainly increase the speed at which you decarbonize your life. Clothes drying is really annoying because it's only 1% of your carbon footprint, and the alternatives are they take longer and they're more expensive up front. So unless you're a completionist, I would personally give you a pass on clothes drying if I was your electrification coach. But if you really want to have your gas meter ripped out, then you do need to switch to electric or a heat pump dryer. So cars, I don't sell cars, and it's a pretty simple thing what you need to do. So I'm just going to say for anybody who might still be confused by the misinformation that electric vehicles have a higher carbon footprint, that is only true in the first 1.4 to 1.9 years of the life of an EV. As you drive the car, by virtue of being connected to a grid and being highly efficient at using kilowatt hours, that vehicle will very quickly get a smaller carbon footprint than driving an internal combustion engine vehicle. So if you need help getting a level 2 charger at your home, that's something I can help you with. But other than that, just buy your favorite brand and whatever EV they make. And that's really all I've got to say about that. HVAC. What are we talking about with HVAC? This is a picture of a heat pump you can see up on a stand next to my old house, which is now a rental. Here's the old air conditioner. An air conditioner is a dumb heat pump, or a heat pump is a smart air conditioner. A heat pump in the summertime will take units of heat from your home, move them through cycling a refrigerant back and forth, and dump them outside. That's the same thing that your air conditioner does. A heat pump has a reversing valve, so it just reverses the process in the wintertime. Through the magic of refrigeration, it picks up units of heat from the outside. Even though it feels very cold to our human bodies, there is heat energy out there, and it brings them inside and moves them around through your ductwork. Um, so that's really all we have to do. Um, just switch to a heat pump. A hybrid solution is appropriate for some homes. It just depends upon your particular setup. You might want to keep the natural gas furnace for backup, or you might want to go all electric, and I could help you coach you through what's going on in your house. Here's my father-in-law and his friend Brian helping me install the heat pump. This one was mounted from the ceiling. It's right above my father-in-law right here. And so it's a really sleek machine. This is a Mitsubishi. We actually gained a little bit of floor space. So weatherization, I said you need to have a reasonable heating load to do this project. Basically, what this means is air sealing and insulation. What we know from building science is that limiting heat loss through convection, i.e. caulking and spray foam, is just as important, if not more important, than limiting heat loss through conduction, i.e. adding insulation. So this is two different ways of sealing up the rim joist, which is where the wood meets the concrete in your basement. On the left is 1 part spray foam, on the right is 2 part spray foam. They both work fine. Just get those gaps and cracks sealed up. And we do a similar thing on the attic floor. So I could talk for a whole hour about weatherization, but basically air sealing and insulation is the name of the game. If I can reduce your air loss and your heat loss to a reasonable level, we can affordably switch you to a heat pump. And I have an estimating tool that will help me figure out if it's going to be cost effective for you to switch to a heat pump. This is a blower door. This is how we see the gaps and cracks. I use a thermal camera while this machine pulls air into your home at the rate that mimics a 20-mile-per-hour wind blowing on all sides of your home continuously. These are some colleagues of mine in a Holland area program that we're helping to run. So here's a little cheat code. What's leaky? How leaky can you be? If you have a 1,500 square foot home, and you have 1,500 cubic feet per minute going through that fan, which I can easily see on my little controller, and you're in the 1-to-1, 1,500 to 1,500. That's like a B minus. It's not too bad. We could make it tighter through air sealing, and I would like to do that. But if you're already there and your furnace dies, we might just switch you to a heat pump right away because your home, it's appropriate for your home. So real quick, just going through the gimmies again, those are the big ones. HVAC is 25% of your carbon footprint and your car is 50. So if you've done those two, you're at 75% of the carbon footprint that you can reasonably manage in your personal life. You'll notice I haven't said anything about turning down the waiter when they offer you a straw at the restaurant or taking a reusable mug to Starbucks. Those are good things. But the vast majority of your carbon footprint comes from these built-in decisions that when you wake up in the morning, if you have a heat pump, you're already slashing your carbon footprint. You don't have to change your behavior at all. So lighting, we just need to switch to LEDs. If you still have old-fashioned light bulbs, don't think that you want to save them because it's wasteful to throw them away. The electricity going through them is far more wasteful than just switching to LEDs. So just throw them out and get LEDs. Here's my dad cooking on a $75 countertop induction stove. They keep this right next to their gas stove, and I'm pretty sure they offset more than half of their gas cooking. It's highly efficient, it's quick, you can't burn your hand on it because it heats the pan itself rather than the surface. So this is an electric technology, but it's far superior to the hot red coil of yesteryear. This actually uses magnets to heat up, or a magnetic field to heat up the pan. So you have to have pans with some iron in them. And again, this is 75 bucks on Amazon. You can buy an induction stove for $1,000 to $2,000, or you can just today you could start offsetting your carbon footprint as it relates to cooking for 75 bucks. This is me with my now almost 4-year-old. We bought this bike and we just fell in love with it. It's so fun. Both our daughters love it, and I can show up sweaty if I want to work hard, but I don't have to. I can just let the bike help me out. And these tend to be in the $1,000 to $2,000 $1,000 to $2,000 range. I also rep this brand, Greenworks, although you can get great stuff from Ego or other brands. These are quieter, they don't smell, you don't have to change the gas or oil. You can charge them at home rather than getting gas from the corner gas station. These are just so much more pleasant to work with once you go electric on lawn tools. I highly doubt that you will go back. And here's the water heater. I chose this picture because it just looks like a regular water heater. You know, I could have chosen a much sexier image from a manufacturer's website, but I just want you to know that there's a heat pump water heater that just fits exactly where your regular water heater is. They call these hybrid units. So it runs the heat pump refrigeration cycle, taking heat from the air in your basement and putting it in the water. In times of high use, it will run like a regular electric water heater. So whereas with the heat pump, you're using about 600 watts, with the electrical, the typical electrical, you're using 10 times that amount. So it's much more efficient and much better for your breaker box to leave it in heat pump mode. But if you have guests and you need lots of showers back to back, you can supercharge it. So that's the last of the 5 gimmies. Cars are 50%, space conditioning is 25%. With these 5 gimmies, you're probably getting another 15 to 20%. So if you did all the things that I've mentioned so far, your carbon footprint would be 90 to 95% slashed. We need to keep an eye on indoor air quality if we tighten up your home. This is a unit from a brand called Aware. It measures temperature, humidity, volatile organic compounds, also known as VOCs, PM 2.5, 2.5 micron thick particulate matter, which is kind of a product of our modern lifestyle. Those don't occur too naturally on planet Earth, and they get very deep in your lungs. And the last one is actually carbon dioxide. We don't want to have excess carbon dioxide outside or inside. It's not good to breathe more than 800 or 900 parts per million carbon dioxide. Okay, I could also talk about this for a full hour, but it's probably really boring to most of you. So I'll just say, if you look at the top row, many of you have 100 amps. But if you looked in your breaker box, like I added mine up, I've got 100 amps, but all those breakers add up to like 395 amps. So that doesn't make any sense. Not all those breakers are running at full capacity all the time. A much more sensible way to think about your total capacity is to go over to watts. So we take 100 amps times 220 volts. We've got about 22,000 watts to play with. Then we start adding up all the things you want to electrify. And if this bottom number surpasses 22,000, we need to get you a bigger breaker box. If it doesn't, you just keep electrifying, baby. You've got plenty of room to play with. This was a customer in Holland who actually had none of these things except for the always on load of 1,000 watts. I just put that in as a conservative. Lights, computers, TVs, that kind of thing. She said, I want an induction stove. She was going to get a heat pump, and we were considering a heat pump water heater. Even with all these things going, she's at less than half her total electrical load. Um, she's probably going to get backup resistance heat. That's quite energy consumptive. So that the one I'm going to recommend will max out at 9,000 watts. So once we add that in, she's still only at 18,600 watts. She's still got a little wiggle room to play with. So she can electrify her home with 100 amps. Everybody's really freaked out about this. This is the non-kosher method for calculating. The National Electrical Code has a much more complicated way, but all the electricians I work with are comfortable with this. Back of the napkin kind of a thing. For those who are at the right, knocking up against the door of 22,000 watts, and you want to get everything electric, a smart panel might be a good way for you to go. This will manage your loads more intelligently. It has software in the back, but all the regular breakers up front. So you can use stuff from the hardware store. Your electrician can use all the breakers that he's normally used to. And this will, for example, you could tell it, hey, never run my EV charger and my electric dryer at the same time, because that could be right there, that could actually be 20,000 watts. So that's good for homeowners and especially data nerds, but it's also good for the grid as a whole. If we can avoid upgrading all of us to 150 amps, 200 amps, then we don't overload the grid quite as much. Sol guesses that we will need to produce and transmit about 3 times as much electricity as we currently are to fully electrify our lives. So the more we can keep that manageable, the better off it is for, the whole electrical grid. I don't have too much to say about solar panels. They're awesome. They're more expensive. There is a 30% tax credit for them. I can help manage a solar project in addition to everything else that I've been describing. And solar panels are, between 10 would be a really cheap system nowadays. You're probably looking at $12,000 to $20,000. If you want to get battery backup, it's probably going to double the cost of that project. But I don't have all the numbers that I've shared with you are based on plugging into a cleaning electrical grid and how that would affect your carbon footprint. So I don't have a number, but I did ask ChatGPT once, what if somebody added rooftop solar panels without electrifying anything? Because you are instantly getting clean energy so much of the day when it's sunny outside, obviously, you could probably offset your carbon footprint by half right there, right then. So maybe if you're not into cars, you don't want to switch to an EV, you have range anxiety, but you would like to have solar panels, that could be another way to accomplish 50% of your carbon footprint. So clothes drying, I can email this to anybody who's interested. It's kind of a funny decision tree for how to figure out if you should get in a heat pump clothes dryer. I think if you want to be 100% electric and you have $1,000 to $3,000 to spend, then you should do it. Otherwise, I would personally give you a pass on this. So there are many benefits. The only one that I really glossed over was how much more comfortable heat pumps are. Heat pumps love to run. They want to run as many minutes out of the hour as possible. The nicest, fanciest heat pumps work perfectly well in Michigan. They're able to warm your home down to very cold temps as long as we size them properly. When they run many, many minutes per hour, they filter your air much better. They dehumidify in the summer much better. They destratify your air by mixing the hot spots and the cold spots around much more frequently, many minutes per hour. And they match the load rather than being all on or all off. They have inverter-driven technology, which is just a fancy way of saying they have a multiplicity of speeds between 0 and 100. So you're never going to be getting that blast of hot air. Your home is just comfortable all the time. So how do we do this? How could we possibly organize a project like this? That's me, I'm your coach. So it's the job of an electrification coach or an electrification project manager to prioritize and maximize the benefits of an energy efficiency and electrification project. I have been studying this, depending on how you count it, for like a decade now. I know what's going on with the programs. I've been studying HVAC. I actually just passed my residential builders test on Tuesday, so I'm very excited about that. I've taken many classes from the Building Performance Institute, and I'm available to help. Some of these things you can tackle on your own, certainly all the gimmies, buying an EV, you know, that if I'm adding it up right, that could probably be 65 to 70% of your carbon footprint. The HVAC and the weatherization is really where I shine and where it pays to call in an expert to help make sure everything's being organized well. So oftentimes it starts with an energy audit. I can do a few different tiers of energy audits. There's actually a free energy audit that I'm going to tell you about in a second. But for $300, we can run the blower door, use the thermal camera to figure out how leaky your home is. This is also a good starting point for proper HVAC sizing. If you have an old furnace, an old air conditioner, and you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of HVAC sizing, for $500, I can do blower door test and also do a heating and cooling load, which involves measuring like everything in your home and creating a mathematical picture of how many BTUs your home loses per hour. For $750, we could do all that and also identify precise opportunities for savings. I have a software program that will tell me if we add this much insulation to your basement walls or your rim joist or your attic floor, you can anticipate this many dollars in savings per year. And I put your utility bills in, so it's all calibrated very specifically. We would also keep an eye on indoor air quality, which is helpful. But you actually don't have to pay. You can get it for free. So the Michigan Home Energy Rebates Program, which just launched statewide on April 15th, is doing everything that I just talked about. I'm not the first guy to say, hey, we need to focus on energy efficiency while electrifying Michigan's housing stock to reduce our carbon footprint. The Michigan Home Energy Rebates Program is doing electrification or energy efficiency for electrification. So they have two different tracks, and it's not terribly interesting what the differences are, but the first one is called Here. They have prescriptive rebates, which are available at these levels, a total of $14,000. A little more lucrative, depending on where you fall in your area median income, is the Homes program. This program actually requires that I use that fancy software that I just mentioned. It's called Snug Pro. And so I make that 3D mathematical picture of your home, and it will tell me what I should do to make your home more energy efficient and to electrify your life. So if you are below 80% of the area median income, and I can use Snug Pro to estimate 35% savings on your total energy footprint, you could be eligible for $20,000, and we can combine them. So it's theoretically possible that you could get $34,000 worth of work done for free if you're in that low income bracket. And the calls are coming in for this. I've already been on a couple audits. I've got 2 more scheduled for next week. I'm obsessed with this program. I think it literally pays for the exact kind of work that I want to do. So I think it's amazing. Here's me with some of my buddies at a energy audit that we did here in Grand Rapids. Just another picture from Electrify West Michigan. So I will now open it up for questions. And real quick, congratulations on being an electrifier. By virtue of just being here, learning about this, you are now much more ready to electrify your life. So I recommend starting with something fun, cheap, and small. That will help you get your wheels turning, get an e-bike, get an induction stove, try to rent an all-electric Airbnb is a really good option if you're going to travel anyway. So I've got tons more ideas, but let's get it kicked off. The hands are flying up. This is
Yeah.
exciting. Mark Miller, what's your question?
I actually have three questions. I'll ask two quick ones and then I'll go to the back of the queue again.
Okay.
Um, what I understand, what your business is doing the testing, and you're not really a contractor to perform the installation of things.
I am a contractor. Pretty much sub it out. So I have a few of my favorite subs who do HVAC, do weatherization, do electrical upgrades, and I kind of act as project manager to make sure that everything's working in cooperation.
So you could actually do the audit for someone, and then they could contract with you to do whatever on the menu that they decide to do.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Great. Okay, super. Um, another quick question. So back like 2005, six, somewhere in that range, I got rid of all my incandescent bulbs and put in what was then the leading technology, which was CFLs. I still have a lot of CFLs, like maybe 40 or 50 in my big house. And I'm waiting for those to burn out so I can replace them with LEDs. What do you think is uh, the best way to go if your CFLs are hanging in there after 15 years? Should you replace them with LEDs? The energy use difference is not that great.
Yeah, that's a good point. My guidance is more for switching from incandescents to LEDs, which is like a 65 or 75 watt down to 9 watts. You're already at 13 watts, so you're not in a bad position. The only other thing is the performance. As you know, it's kind of crummy in cold weather, and many people bought CFLs that were very cool in color temperature, and they don't know what to look for and have been, especially my energy efficiency nerds, have been suffering in silence with harsh lighting for all these years. So if that bugs you, or if you want to get the mercury out of your home, those would be the other two reasons to upgrade. But energy efficiency wise, it's not, excuse me, that big of a gain.
I have
Yeah,
a
that's what I
question
thought.
that ties in with that, replace versus waiting.
Sure.
We were reading a book that talked a lot about embedded carbon. And so it's, when you think about embedded carbon, would Mark be better off waiting because he's not, he already, the carbon creating the light bulb has already been taken care of versus buying new, and that creates more carbon as you're producing the new products. So should we be thinking about that in something about replace versus wait?
In my opinion, almost certainly not. I think that might be victim to the sunk cost fallacy. By virtue of running more electricity through that CFL or that incandescent every day, which is not yet fully green electricity in Michigan, you are continually incurring a new carbon footprint for running that light bulb. So something that cheap with that small of a embedded carbon footprint, I would say just toss it.
Okay,
The calculation gets a little fuzzier when we're talking about like, okay, should I throw out my 5-year-old furnace? I'd be hard pressed to recommend somebody to do that. But let's make a plan for, the average age of catastrophic failure of a furnace is about 18 years with a standard deviation of 1.5 years. So maybe let's just go a little early on that. Let's go like 12 to
okay,
15 years, and not wait the full 18 years.
okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Didn't mean to interrupt you, Tom, but you're next.
Oh, okay. Um, so my question is, our grant program, which is not activated yet, but we're hoping, um, would provide about $40,000 to upgrade 300 homes in Kalamazoo with energy efficiency and electrification as far as it'll go. And there'll be mostly, although it's not exclusively low income, it'll be mostly low to moderate income properties. So my question is, and the thing that it keeps nagging at me is, if we push heat pumps for those houses versus a 90+% furnace, what's the operating cost difference between those? I know it's more expensive to run the heat pump. I don't know how much. Do you have a comparison tool to do that?
Yeah, I do. Can you see the right soft operating cost estimate 2.0?
Yes.
So what I do is I'll take somebody's heating and cooling costs, which I can deduce from their utility bills. And there's probably starting with an AC and gas furnace. Let's say it's like a SEER 11 air conditioner, just like a middling efficiency. Say it's an old 80% efficient furnace. And then I will change these numbers here, the heating requirements in BTUs and the cooling capacity in BTUs, until I get the numbers that I want to see right here. Let's say I looked at June, July, and August for this customer, and they had $331 in cooling costs. And I looked at, the winter months, and I got $577 in heating costs. Well, if I had put, oh God, I think they need a 4-ton furnace. No, that's not the right number because that's showing me $1,500 in heating costs. I've got to go back. 18,000 BTUs was the right number. So then I put the new system in here. Let's see, heat pump split. I'm going to choose the Carrier 25 VNA4. That's a really fancy, nice cold climate heat pump. And I'm going to importantly check this box, select for heating. That means we don't have a furnace for backup heat. And I could pretty much just drop all the way down, ignore all this stuff. The annual savings that I see estimated here is $423. Now, this is in Holland. They have really cheap electricity. It's 9.5 cents per kilowatt hour. If I change this number to consumers territory, which is 0.1919 cents, see how that changes it. I'm only saving $298. What if it was a much leakier home? What if they really did need 4 tons of heating? I'm still actually going to save $122. So we just play with this, go back and forth between the utility bills to figure out, we just kind of back into the numbers with this tool. There's a lot of fear mongering out there about switching to heat pumps. And I think with properly done heating loads and properly sized heat pumps, it's much more doable in Michigan. I know of 2 studies, one which concluded one way and the other which concluded the other way. The negative conclusion was in and around the Detroit area, they switched some people to heat pumps without doing any weatherization first. So they had very drafty homes. They were burning through a ton of kilowatt hours. And they saw net losses annually. These people were paying more for their electrical bills. There was another study done on the west side of Michigan and some homes in northern Michigan, and they paired weatherization with switching to heat pumps, and they saw a modest but net reduction in their energy bills. So that's why I'm always sure to say in this presentation that we can and should electrify homes, but we need to be really diligent about weatherizing at the same time.
And
Great.
with our project, what we were going to be doing is basically doing the weatherization type of thing and fixing up the house so that it would be available and ready for the heat pumps. But with the low income houses, we were figuring that they're probably air sieves right now, and they still have problems with their basements, their roofs, that kind of thing. And that was where a lot of the money was going to go into.
As well as just repairs.
Right.
We know that a lot of them, need roof repairs, need front steps, safety repairs and so forth. So it starts getting really thin. Is that tool that's a Carrier tool, is that available to the public?
Yeah, it's free to use. Susan.
Yes, thank you, Will. This was a wonderful presentation. Thank you
Oh,
so
thank you.
much. So detailed, so much good information.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you included that NASA graph. I include that in all my own outreach. I think that should be on billboards everywhere.
I know, right?
Yeah, yeah. So like Mark, I had multiple questions, so I'll just ask a few. I'm so pleased that you offer climate cafes through the Grand Rapids Climate Coalition, right? And I'd be curious if you know about how you make that happen. And I'm also curious about what some of your group's successes have been in reaching the greater public with the need for climate action, the kind of things they need to do. What sorts of initiatives have worked the best for you?
Yeah, great question. So for the climate cafes, that particular monthly event was a collaboration with a friend of mine who more consistently hosts a climate cafe every month or every other month or so. My events tend to be more varied, but that was a great event. And if you want to be put in touch with him, I
Yeah.
can put you in touch. There's a framework available for hosting a climate cafe from the, I don't know, Climate Cafe Institute or something. And that was a really touching event. Normally we talk about kilowatt hours and therms or battery sizes and stuff like that. And it was a joy to just take a month, and it was a beautiful day, as you saw in the picture, to just be humans and support each other with some of the grief and stress that's associated with this. As for outreach that really works, Susan, I would say um, I'm, just running a one-man show here at Green Projects Group and Electrify West Michigan, and we've had some amazing monthly conversations. I can't say enough for pushing myself out of my comfort zone to host a monthly meetup, even though, as I said, I'm not really an event organizer as de facto. But much better than those events has been the Grand Rapids Climate Coalition, and I think the yard signs have been very helpful. Just having, like Electrify West Michigan, just having a container, a monthly meeting that is a space for us to just convene. I'm sure you guys do that already, just to share thoughts, resources, and events. We are trying to get up on the newly formed West Michigan climate calendar. Are you guys familiar with that one? So events like this today, we should be putting on there. Other things that help, we really push ourselves to engage with the press. You're more than welcome to join the Grand Rapids Climate Coalition meetings if you have more time and energy to kind of like learn up on how we've been doing that. There's a great guy that joins our meetings from the east side of the state. Kim Hunter is his name. There are people who just are really good at thinking about how to engage the press, how to message for your events, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I could probably talk about this for a full hour.
Mark,
Okay, I should have said at the beginning, fascinating talk, lots
Oh,
of
thanks.
good crunchy detail. Down to the standard deviation of furnace failures. That's great.
I just learned that one, so I had to throw it in.
Several of us on this call, in fact, are considering giving up natural gas completely and installing heat pumps and or a geothermal, so-called geothermal, but at any rate, ground-based heat pumps. We are aware that the working fluid in heat pumps, if it escapes, does have a global warming potential. And I've tried to research that a bit. It's hard to know exactly what's on the market out there. And specifically that the standards may be changing, although who knows, with the new administration, what that means compared to what plans were earlier. I wonder if you can just talk a little bit about that and what are the risks that your working fluid is going to escape from your system, and what the consequences might be, and just whatever you're aware of quickly. I'm
Sure.
sure there's a lot that could be said about this. Thanks.
Yeah, there certainly is. I mean, as with all these things, each one is a little rabbit hole unto itself. But the base unit for GWP, or global warming potential, is 1. And so I think that unit is carbon dioxide. And the new refrigerants are basically inching lower and lower, the GWP index. And so as of December of last year, there was a big rush that they were all switching from what's called R410A, which is a much better refrigerant than the refrigerants of yesteryear, which R22, I think, was a really nasty one. R410A has a GWP in the hundreds somewhere, so it's not great, but it's not as awful as it had been. Also, it has no ozone depleting potential, as far as I understand. So it's getting better and better. There are some units that use actually, so let me just say, the new standard is a type of refrigerant that is, I think it is mildly flammable, but much less flammable than natural gas. And it has a lower GWP than R410A. So I think it might even like have methane in it, which is curious. So so we're moving in the right direction. There are some units which are more than experimental, which use CO2. So there's I priced one for a job. It's not going to work out. There's a heat pump water heater that uses CO2 from a company called Sanden, S-A-N-D-E-N, and their unit is the Sanco 2, the Sand CO2, and it's about $13,000 installed, but it uses a refrigerant that is the base unit for GWP, carbon dioxide. It's very interesting. So all that being said, at the end of the day, my answer, Mark, is I've read a blurb about this. Don't let this fear stop you. You might have a bad, somebody's going to have a bad experience. Their refrigerant is going to leak. Their R410A is going to go into the atmosphere. But on the whole, it's much better that we all reduce our carbon footprint by switching to a refrigerant-based system. And some of those will leak, than it would be to continue burning natural gas. So a little unsatisfying, one of those average versus individual experience type answers. We need to do this, and it will be for the best ultimately in aggregate.
Do you have a website of your own?
Yeah, greenprojectsgroup.com.
So great. Okay, you'll hear from me some more.
Cool.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Mark.
much.
My pleasure.
Okay, Tom has his hand up for a question.
Not a question, just a comment about the leakage of refrigerant. A lot of that has to do with the skill of the installers. They're making the connections on site. And so, you know, reliability of the people who are working there is important. There are some interesting sort of window units that are pre-assembled in the factory where all the connections are, I think they're welded or soldered, so they're pretty secure connections on that stuff. And these things just kind of fit over your windowsill like a pair of saddlebags. It obviously is not doing the whole house, but you know, if you're they were developed for the New York City Housing Authority, and they're, you know, they're putting these maybe 2 or 3 of them into a house to make up for removing the fossil fuel heating and the air conditioners that are there. So I'm not sure whether they're available to the general public yet, unless you buy, you know, 500 of them at a time, but they probably will be. So keep your eyes peeled.
So, thank you.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks for coming. Thanks, Marianne.
You're welcome. Thank you, Will.
Bye-bye.
Bye.